Hi there, welcome to this week's edition of the Heart of a Youth Leader podcast. I wonder what is going on inside your heart today. It's a big question, straight in, no messing about, because this is what I want us to address today. And it's this thing about our external actions aligning themselves with the internal thoughts of our hearts. Because I believe this is where we get it. We get our mental health and our well-being really comes into effect. We will be in a better place in our well-being if our external actions match the internal workings of our heart. And it's an obvious thing, but it's also something that I think we miss a lot. And if we're going to be good youth workers, good youth leaders, good children's leaders, we need to model integrity in our words matching up with our thoughts. And I believe this is what young people desperately need. In a culture of social media, in a culture of filters on their Snapchat and TikTok accounts, the public persona is so easily disconnected from the internal reality. And it starts with us. How are you doing in these things? And this week I've been reflecting on Psalm 19. And Psalm 19 ends with these words. It's a wonderful psalm of David praising God for who he is. And it says, "May these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer." And it's that thing of my words from my mouth and my meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, God. And this is what I want to consider today is, well, what am I saying about God? And what do I believe about God in my heart? What is the disconnect between the two, and what is the alignment of the two? Are the words that I say to people in a youth group setting what I actually believe, or am I saying what I think they ought to believe? Am I speaking truth? Am I telling them my testimony of God's goodness? Or am I telling them the theoretical of God's goodness? What does my heart actually feel? And it's a challenge for all of us, because there of course are times when we go, last thing I want to do is go to youth group tonight. But I go out of obedience because I know it's what I'm supposed to do, or I know it's what I'm paid to do. And sometimes it's a bit of both, isn't it? But actually, we still need to be people of integrity, because young people see straight through it. And I think in their culture, they are looking desperately for integrity. People of truthfulness, not people of rules, not people of theories, not people of this is how it ought to be, but they need integrity. And it's up to us to align our thoughts with our hearts. And I love the fact that David talks about the meditations of my heart. I wonder what you really chew on day to day. I wonder what your meditations of your heart are at the moment. Are you really struggling with something? Are you believing that no one really is interested in you, or that you're just I think it's common for youth leaders to be people who feel like they're making it up as they go along, and it's almost like imposter syndrome, that we don't really feel like we should be doing this, and one day someone's going to find out that I don't know as much as I pretend to know, and all this kind of stuff. And that's not good for us. That's not good for us. And our heart is so important, because it's actually what makes us us. And yet Jesus tells us of our capacity to have evil in our heart. You know, if we look at towards the end of Matthew 7, in verse 20, Jesus says what comes out of a person is what defiles them. It is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil comes. Sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. That's a long list. And Jesus is saying all these things come from our heart. He's not saying that you do all these things in action, But if you're feeling it, if you're longing for revenge, if you're longing to kill someone, if you're longing for adultery, if you're longing to envy, to be jealous of what someone else has, or you're full of arrogance, that's a heart response. And he's saying inevitably that will work its way out in our actions and in our speech, whether we realize it or not. We might be holding on to these feelings of resentment and thinking that our actions and our words don't betray us. But the reality is over time they will. And so the meditations of our hearts, we need to take time to think through what is actually going on inside me at the moment. What are the good things and what are the bad things? And what I'd love you to do sometime this week is take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, as long as it takes, to actually, before God, pour out your heart. What are the things that you're believing? What are the things you're holding on to? And what are the things that are not good for you? What are the things of the heart which are not godly? And rather than meditating on those things, choose to turn your meditation to those things of God and the good things. Because as David poured out his heart, he meditated on the wonder of God. He didn't meditate on his insecurities. And that's what we need to change. But it starts with recognizing the state of our heart. So ask yourself, what are the things that I find myself concerned for? You know, it's that old chestnut of, if you know how to worry, you know how to meditate, because worry is a form of meditation. You know, it's just chewing on our minds of things we're worried about. Well, Jesus tells us to chew on the things that we are excited about and the good things of God. And so it's choosing to focus on him rather than choosing to focus on our fears. But all too often we ignore our fears. We don't give ourselves time to think, is this okay to think this? And sometimes we'll recognise as we reflect on our hearts what the sources of those things are. Maybe it's because we're drawn to watching films and programmes and things on the internet which actually are not good for us. They increase our jealousy, they increase our envy, our lust, or whatever it may be. And as we examine our heart, we realise we've got to stop those things. Maybe you'll find there's certain relationships that are not good for you, that actually it encourages gossip, it encourages deceitfulness, or it encourages whatever, and we need to recognise those things. The worst thing we can do is ignore our hearts and just keep pretending and have the attitude of, well, if I just keep pretending to be good, eventually I'll become good. It doesn't work like that. And so the challenge this week is find time to reflect on the state of your heart, and let's make it our ambition that the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts will be pleasing in God's sight. Have a good week. Now go for it.